Right, next up, we have Warlock. And card number 1, Party Fiend. 1 cost 1/1. Battlecry, summon 2 1/1 Fell Beasts, deal 3 damage to your hero. There's already quite a bit of support for like self-damage Warlock. It is one of the more powerful decks that is around right now. So having another like way to support that is possibly a pretty powerful effect. Certainly a 3/1/1s is more difficult for a lot of decks to deal with than like a single 3/2/2. It's basically another flame imp, and it's a flame imp that like spreads its stats across multiple bodies, which if there are reasons that we care about that, can be quite powerful. But again, just another cheap way to support Pain Warlock does have the potential just by merit of being able to damage yourself, could potentially be pretty strong. Next, you have Cursed Souvenir. Give a minion +3/+3, and at the start of your turn, deal 3 damage to your hero. This does not really feel so much a Painlock card as just an aggro card. It works very well with the Party Fiend and its Fell Beasts, because even if your opponent kills one of them, you're very likely to have another target for this. You still would probably play some of the other pain cards in a deck that's using this, but it would likely be a deck that is more focused on actually just being aggressive rather than kind of having the mid game board explosion of Molten Giant and things like that you're seeing right now. And more on being an actually like very, very aggressive deck that's just leveraging its life total for pressure. Next, Fearless Flame Juggler. Battlecry, gain stats equal to the damage your hero has taken this turn. We are really leaning into the self-damage. Yeah, I mean, talking about the Felbeast, talking about Flame Imp, talking about, all the various ways there are to self-damage right now, this is the potential to get real big real fast. I don't know that Pain Warlock necessarily needed a ton of help, but these, so far, we're seeing some things that are pretty helpful for exactly that. Again, like, these do lend themselves to be more of a fast-paced self-damage deck rather than a, hey, I'm going to, explode with a bunch of stats at a certain point once I get Molten Giant or whatever down. Being able to like play like Flame Imp plus the Fell Beast guy plus this and just get a 7/7, on like turn 4 or whatever. Or with like mass production to even get potentially similar, faster, whatever, or with guys that damage you when they attack, so you even do it without mana. A lot of ability to generate a lot of stats very, very quickly by punching yourself in the face. Next up, we have Sacrificial Imp, 3 cost 1/6, death rattle. If it's your turn, summon a 6/6 Imp with Taunt, which is, obviously things that kill your own things, like, I think it's this one. Eat the Imp! 2 cost spell, destroy friendly minions, draw 3 cards. Obviously, very much intended to use with Sacrificial Imp. There are, other sorts of ways that you can use, sort of things that eat your own guys, take advantage of the Sacrificial Imp, or just trade it into your opponent's stuff. So I think it's interesting. There are things that specifically are like, hey, kill this, as opposed to just like you have cheap fodder to sacrifice. But yeah, I do think that, by the way, Eat the Imp does seem like a very powerful card, just overall, right? Like if you're playing a deck that is, say using Party Fiend, you just have a 1/1 body. All right, 2 mana, kill one of them, draw 3 cards. A lot of ways to take advantage of having incidental bodies around, having death rattle bodies around, and just churn through your deck to draw extra cards. Next up, we have Summoner Dark Marrow with Death Knight Tourist. 4 cost 4/4, your death rattle trigger twice. After you play a death rattle minion, destroy it. I have an idea of what we might want to tourist in when we're playing a death rattle trigger twice card. I don't know, maybe this. Eliza Goreblade. Hey, look, I immediately get both effects by playing my tourist card into that, and now, boom, all my minions have +2 attack forever. Seems pretty straightforward as to where that might go. And you don't have to worry about the rune requirements because you can only get the one card. But yeah, this card I think just seems very powerful, right? Like if you there's lots of, obviously you can use it with Sacrificial Imp, you can use it with Nerubian Egg, you can use it with all sorts of things to get additional bodies on the board. There's lots of cheap ways to generate that kind of stuff, and double death rattling those, that seems real strong. This seems like a really, really, really powerful card. There's already pretty obvious, really strong synergies with. Next, we have Announce Darkness. which is a hilarious name. It's like, hey, look, it's me. I'm Dark. Replace your hero power and non-Warlock cards with Warlock cards. They cost one less. So obviously a play on Renounced Darkness, which replaced your hero power and Warlock cards with cards from another class that cost less. This is, you could just play this and a bunch of neutral cards and reduce the cost of your entire deck and they become Warlock cards. You can only, you can then, announce Darkness again and boom, do it again. But yeah, this is the meme card. Like you're not realistically going to build a deck that's like relying on getting random Warlock cards that cost one less to win the game. But it can be a funny meme, and more than anything, I like the fact that it is a meme on a previous meme from Renounce to Announce. Next, we have Party Planner Vona, a 6-cost 4/4 battlecry. If you take an 8 damage of your own card, summon Orobos. I don't know what that is. So let's look it up. If it's a 6-cost with battlecry, if you take an 8 damage of your turn, summon a 8/8 taunt with Death Rattle. Give a minion in your hand Death Rattle, summon Orobos. That's very easy to do and very powerful. That said, I don't know that even though this is really powerful, I'm not even sure that this is like a particular highlight card in those decks. It probably is, because it is still just like, you're just getting a ton of stats, right? But like, the fact that it even comes back doesn't even seem that huge a deal. It's mostly like, hey, you're just getting a ton of stats up front for, 6 mana. You're getting 12 worth of stats that potentially represents even more. And it's just very easy to take 8 damage in your turns, right? Like, the self-damage Warlock, again, was already a really good deck, and there's a bunch more support in this, along with another, like, big payoff card for it in this form. So self-damage Warlock definitely seems like the big winner for Warlock from this set. As you have Health Drink, 3-cost, lifesteal, deal 3 damage to a minion. Pretty inefficient, but obviously, like over the course of a longer game, if you're playing a control deck, this can be a great way to get removal and keep your life up if you're damaging yourself. Probably not the sort of thing you want to play on any of the actual self-damage decks, despite the fact that you are damaging yourself a lot. Simply because it's inefficient. You only hit minions. You just have such good uses for your mana otherwise. But this does feel like maybe if you're playing like a controlling Warlock deck, this is a good tool to just have that life gain and removal over the course of a longer game. And lastly, Fellfire Bonfire. 4-cost Fell spell, deal 4 damage to a minion. If it dies, your next Death Rattle minion costs 3 less. Yeah, I mean, we've sort of already seen a couple of pretty powerful Death Rattle Warlock cards. This one it's pretty specific, right? 4 damage to do a minion. If it dies, it deals your next Death Rattle minion costs less. Maybe. Like, obviously there could be some powerful Death Rattles you want to use alongside Summoner Dark Marrow. Be able to play Summoner plus a like up to a 9 in the same turn because it costs 3 less. It's going to end up being 6. Can be very powerful to like double Death Rattle, something huge. But this is very situational, right? Like there has to be a minion that this kills, and then yes, you can float the reduction. But I feel like naturally a deck with this is going to want to play cheap things. Because this effect is only relevant when it's in play, and you want to be able to get the effects of things like, Imp. Though obviously being able to, say, cast Fellfire Bonfire on something on turn 4, turn 5, you play Summoner Dark Marrow and a Sacrificial Imp, right? And suddenly you get 2 6/6 taunts. Overall, I think, yeah, you could theoretically, because the Ouroboros does give Death Rattle to a thing in your hand, right? I don't know that card to actually pull up, the card image to pull up, but the Ouroboros gives the Death Rattle Summon Ouroboros to a minion in your hand, so it would work with Fellfire Bonfire and with Summoner Dark Marrow. That said, you're crossing a lot of streams to make, a self-damage deck plus, this plus this. You could theoretically just life tap 4 times, but that seems pretty inefficient over the course of most normal games. But yeah, overall, I think that the Death Rattle stuff is what I'm most interested in, Dark Marrow seems really cool. The Sacrificial Imp seems really cool. I like Eat the Imp in a Death Rattle deck. That also seems really cool. I think the most powerful stuff for Warlock is definitely the self damage stuff. Self damage is already in a really good spot, and there's some, Flame Juggler, Party Fiend, and Party Plan of Vona all feel like they give quite a bit of additional possible power to a deck that already has a lot of tools. So I do feel like Warlock is likely to be in a pretty strong place this expansion with a number of viable decks that all of which are likely to have some pretty strong and exciting stuff that they can do. All right, and lastly, for classes at least, we have Warrior. Warrior has a food theme this expansion, which is perfect for me. I love food. First up is Food Fight. 3-cost spell. Summon a 0/6 entree for your opponent. When it dies, summon a minion from your deck. So this is pretty interesting, right? Like, you could just play like War Axe on 2, Food Fight, and then hit it again the next turn or whatever, and get yourself a giant minion from your deck. This clearly wants you to have minions that either have powerful like passive effects, like a Sarah, powerful death rattles, things that just giant stats, things like Titans can be really powerful off of this because you're obviously not getting Battle Cries because they're coming out into play immediately. You want to be playing a deck that is not playing small minions, so you do have a lot of restrictions. Like, you're not going to be able to play like Armorer in this deck. There are like big things like Beached Whale in the new set, which we'll get to, or just big things in the current set like this Monstrosity, very much food themed, but a 9-cost 6/9. I heard nice. With Taunt at the end of your turn, summon an elemental with stats equal to this minion's. So this is obviously a very, very powerful thing to cheat to play early on in the game. Makes it very difficult for your opponent to, just answer a single thing, and just does a lot of work generating a giant body every single turn until it dies. If you do have, say, a way to hand buff this, like, this isn't necessarily just a Food Fight card, right? This could be a taunt warrior card, a high end thing where you're like, hey, I'm going to play this, and every turn, we're going to generate like a gigantic thing with Taunt Warrior. So I am curious about exploring Taunt Warrior with this guy as the top end myself. But overall, I think it's more likely to be sort of a Food Fight slash other style of card. Next, we have Draconic Delicacy, another very powerful card to sort of get out early in the game. 8-cost 6/6 Rush Elusive, can only take 1 damage at a time. So obviously this is a very, very powerful board control tool, as well as a very powerful tool against decks that are reliant on damage-based effects to remove it. The fact that it's elusive too is wild, right? It is very difficult for a lot of decks to actually get rid of this. They have to, like Blade Storm it, right? Like they can't target it with anything. They can't kill it with a single big hit of damage. It's just like a massively, massively difficult thing to remove. Obviously, like, still dies to like a Poisonous Ziliax. And it is pretty expensive, and it's not that big for the cost, but it is a very powerful tool for just making your opponent's life miserable trying to get rid of it. Next we have Char. Very, very sweet hand buff style card. Deal 7 damage to a minion for 4. Give a minion in your hand stats equal to the excess damage. I really like this. There's obviously we just saw Monstrosity. We're gonna have some melted cheese by charring that and making it even bigger. Not like an amazing removal effect, right? But the additional stats you get on something. Get this on like Minotaurin, make a gigantic Minotaurin. That was a card that was very hyped, ended up being kind of disappointing. But overall, like, lots of possibly really strong things to land this on. I'm someone who loves hand buff style effects, and this is a pretty strong one. Next we have Line Cook, a 3-cost 2/4 tradable with Taunt. When you draw this, get a copy of it. So this is a really interesting card from a Taunt Druid perspective, or a Taunt Warrior perspective, right? Like, this, just being able to keep trading it and keep getting more of them. And, like, notably, tradable cards keep effects on them. They keep modifiers, right? Any card that is not tradable, if it is returned to your deck, loses any modifiers that are on it. Line Cook, as a tradable card, keeps the modifiers if it goes back into your deck, right? It is a very important note, because if you are playing like hand buff or like taunt warrior, right? And you buff this with various taunt things, and then you trade it back into your deck and you draw more of them, they keep the buff and the copy keeps the buff, right? Really important thing to keep in mind. As a hand buff connoisseur and as a taunt warrior connoisseur, I love this card. Love it. I, already saw Monstrosity. Now this guy, I am all in on taunt warrior, let me tell you. Next up, Undercooked Calamari. Incredible name. 4 cost 3/4. Battlecry, destroy an enemy minion with attack less than or equal to this minion's. Another, nice card to possibly hand buff. Could possibly use it with Char, or it can also just be this kills a guy, right? Like less than or equal to. This can just kill like a 3-drop or a 2-drop or whatever when it comes into play. Or if you have buff for it, obviously can get that much stronger. I think just a very solid card, solid tempo tool for like a hand buff style deck. One of the big things about like hand buff type decks, right? And one of the reasons we see like hand buff Paladin being effective right now is that you need the hand buffs that you get on your stuff to make up for the lost tempo with the time you spend buffing, the time and resources, right? And this directly does that, right? This directly eliminates an opposing minion, and takes advantage of the fact that you've hand buffed it. And speaking of hand buff, boom, Cup of Muscle. 1 cost spell, give a minion your hand +2/+1. 3 drinks left. So this is a multi-buff card. And notably, this is a single minion buff card, single card. Unlike a lot of hand buff stuff, which is, X number of minions or all the minions. And this effect, you can play a hand buff deck that is not necessarily like super minion dense if you are not relying so heavily on like, buff all your minions, because those tend to be costed in a particular way, right? Like this can be, you can be playing a deck that is playing, more things like the Calamari to buff with your Cup of Muscle, and like you don't feel like you're wasting it by using 1-on-1, right? Because you do have that relatively powerful effect to take advantage of it. So perhaps the coolest card in the entire set, the Rye Cleaver. So Rye Cleaver, 7 cost weapon, Battlecry, and Death Rattle. Get a slice of bread. And get 2 to sandwich any minions in between. So the way that this works is that when you Battlecry, you get your sandwich, or rather you get your bread. And then you get the next bread, and they make a sandwich. And any minions between those 2 cards in your hand, you can spend 2 and summon them. It's a very interesting card because like you play it and you swing if you want, right? And then you wait to swing until you've drawn minions to go in between the slice of bread, and then you can summon them with the sandwich. Sandwich Warrior. What happens if you buff the durability? Well, it's a Death Rattle effect, not a swing effect, right? The Battle Cry gives you the first slice of bread. The Death Rattle gives you second slice of bread. If you play this and your opponent just kills it right away, you just have a sandwich that does nothing, right? Unless you somehow got a minion in between. So yeah, you can use this with the pack, the standardized pack, and play this, cast the standardized pack, get your sandwich, summon them all. It's hilarious, right? This is like kind of hilarious. And this obviously is a sort of card that wants to go in the same deck as Food Fight, because when you're playing big minions, you're playing minions that you want to just summon and put into play. You don't want things with like battle cries because they're just summoning them directly. You certainly don't want an empty sandwich, right? You don't want them to kill it right away. But it is a 7 cost weapon that if your opponent vipers it, does nothing, right? So that is a little unfortunate. But it's super funny. I love it. Literally, you just play like Sandwich Warrior will be a deck, and it will be very funny. The fact that Food Fight is and Rye Cleaver, you're just playing Food Warrior. I'm into it. Speaking of Food Warrior, right here, Ham the Hungry. Sometimes you see yourself in a game, and it really makes it feel that much more meaningful. Yeah, here we go. Ham the Hungry. Druid Tourist. At the end of your turn, eat a minion in the opponent's deck to get +2/+2. So, Druid, the Druid cards that you can potentially tourist in this set. There's obviously ramp spells, right? There's like this Hydration Station as a tourist card for your big deck is kind of exciting. You know, like there's this. There's New Heights. Having a ramp effect that lets you go to 13 is pretty exciting. There's like this Discover Taunt. If you want to, like guarantee that you can Rye Cleaver and boom, I activate Hiking Trail. I armor, activate Hiking Trail. My Rye Cleaver is going to get me my sandwich. I do think that Hydration Station feels like maybe the most exciting because it's 3 highest cost taunt minions. You get a lot of big taunt minions in like a big Food Warrior deck. That feels like a direction that makes a lot of sense for the tourist. It also could potentially just resummon Ham and eat more of their stuff. So yeah, I think that this is I've seen people say that they think this card is terrible. I think they're crazy. Obviously it's not like an amazing tempo card, but you're eating one of your opponent's minions, which can be very powerful against combo decks. We've obviously seen many combo style decks over time. And if your opponent doesn't kill it, it just keeps going, keeps getting bigger, keeps eating more minions from their deck. It is certainly not a tempo card. This is a horrible tempo card. This is like an anti-combo style card that also has, the additional utility of Druid Taurus, which maybe gives you, again, something that could be a big swing against control or other long game style decks. So yeah, overall, I like the Warrior cards a lot. I think that the food themed cards, Food Fight and Rye Cleaver, Sandwich Warrior, MVP. But also, I love Taunt Warrior, and Line Cook actually may be the more important one between Line Cook and Monstrosity. But these are just really interesting possible options for it. Oh, I guess I actually did screw up and miss this one before I was talking about all the end of it. All you can eat, draw 3 minions of different minion types. Menagerie Warrior's back at it. Menagerie, there are actually, there were support tools for Menagerie Warrior for a long time. We lost a lot of that with the loss of Amalgam, but there's the new Amalgam, and the new Amalgam that shuffles back into your deck alongside things like Voon, and Roaring Applause and Magnetic cards, and this is like a 3-cost draw 3 minions is really powerful, right? And one of the issues that those decks can have is A, card draw, B, efficiency, and having the Amalgam as one of the things that you can continuously buff with various effects and then keep getting more copies of. And if you play with Voon, keep getting more of them into your deck and everything, does seem like it has some interesting potential to it. So I'm excited to try that as well. So Warrior may be the class in this set of the various tools they have that I am the most excited about, because there's stuff for multiple different sort of new styles of decks, as far as, Sandwich Warrior and now like a revisiting Menagerie Warrior, along with some really powerful cards for Taunt Warrior as well. So a lot of really cool things that I'm excited to play coming in for Warrior in this expansion. All right, it is time for the final set of cards from the expansion, Neutrals. First up, we have Resort Valet, a 4-cost 3/5 power with Battlecry. Discover a card from the newest expansion. This is a neat card because it's obviously effect is going to continue to update over time. Right now, obviously, it is going to be discover a card from Perils in Paradise. It is at a 4-cost 3/5 with no other abilities. It does not seem like it is likely to be quite good enough tempo wise or quite high impact enough value wise, considering it can discover random neutrals or whatever. But yeah, it is a very very interesting card. Probably not quite good enough, but can certainly give you a little bit of incremental value or more shots at specific cards in the new set if you have a deck that is looking to, leverage that. I could maybe see this thing playing like a brand deck or something, some sort of Battlecry focused deck. Maybe this is playing like Shutterblock Shaman or whatever. I was gonna say somehow Shutterblock Warlock, but that's not legal. But yeah, certainly a very cool card. Don't expect it to be an all-star, but could maybe see some niche play now and then. Next, I think we know how good this is. Marin the Manager. This is the sort of preview card for the set. Super strong. We've seen it crazy powerful in Druid, very powerful in like Priest, very powerful in Rogue. Just very, very, very powerful card. We've already seen it see a lot of play, and I expect it to continue to do so. Next, we have Weapons Attendant. 6 cost 6/4 pirate. Battlecry. If you control another pirate, equip a random weapon from your deck. Like if there's really expensive weapons, right? Like this could go, like go into a deck that's using like the big demon hunter weapon. If like Rye Cleaver weren't, I guess Rye Cleaver doesn't really care too much about this, but I don't think you want this in a deck that's likely to be playing food fight and stuff. It being like an extra way to get like your expensive weapons, your like legendary weapons and stuff could be interesting. But again, like I feel like a Rye Cleaver deck wants to be playing food fight, and this is a terrible hit for food fight. So you probably wouldn't play this or other small pirates in your deck. So yeah, it is I think a card that has like some utility like that could be expanded longer term as there's more like big weapons introduced for more classes. So it's worth keeping an eye on, though I don't know that it's necessarily impactful right now. Next, we have Snoozin' Zookeeper. Battlecry, summon an 8/8 beast for your opponent. It attacks all of their minions. So this is an interesting one, right? Like, it's probably not good enough in constructed. It seems like a like an absolute nightmare of a card in arena, right? Like this is a big body that can possibly kill all your opponent's stuff, and like if even if they have something left over, you could probably finish it off pretty easily. But I think in constructed, like you're probably not gonna run into enough situations where this is likely to be a good card. Unless there's some way to like take advantage of specifically them having this beast or whatever. There's not like you could like BGH it or something if something goes wrong. I don't know. Does not seem likely to see play constructed. Next up we have Sleepy Resident, a 4-cost 3/5 taunt with death rattle. All their minions fall asleep. So what this means is basically the ZZZ that you get when they come into play. They can't attack again. They can't attack until your next turn. It's kind of like freeze. But yeah, I think it's a pretty cool card. Frankly, if it had a minion type, like if this were a pirate, maybe it would be like like interesting and good enough to possibly see play in some sort of deck. But I think that it's probably just going to be relegated to arena card as a result. Next up, we have Package Dealer, a 6-cost 6/7. Great stats for the cost. After you draw a card, 50% chance to draw another. Just based on, like no impact when you play it, probably not good enough, by any means. Just if you had if this was a little bit cheaper, maybe it would be reasonable. But yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty difficult card to really make work in any sort of meaningful way. Next up, we have Terrible Chef, a 3-cost 2/1 undead. Battlecry, summon a 0/2 Nerubian Egg, Death Rattle, destroy it. If you're playing a Death Rattle deck, more Nerubian Eggs, and Nerubian Eggs that can just get themselves killed is kind of interesting. I think you'd probably, maybe a deck wants just enough Nerubian Eggs, they're willing to play this and Nerubian Egg, especially considering that you don't even necessarily have to have a way to get the Nerubian Egg itself killed because you can just get this killed. So it can sort of be, just like a 3-cost 4/4 in many cases, which obviously it's not quite, because you're probably just not kill this and you don't get the 4/4 until the following turn. But this could also maybe be an evolve target because you still keep the Nerubian Egg. I don't know. Probably not quite good enough, but certainly has a little bit of potential in Death Rattle decks. Next we have Sailboat Captain, 3-cost 2/4. Battlecry, give a friendly pirate Wind Fury. Certainly scary, right? Like this, if you get any kind of big pirate, this can do a ton of damage if you have big buffs for your minions. I can certainly imagine this in Wild with Cold Blood being scary. With hand buff on a a deckhand can be scary. So definitely lots of possible opportunities for this to just be a powerful effect. I mean, you could even just be playing a pirate deck, right? There's so many pirates in this set that it's not just hey, here's a few. It's you could just play a deck with a bunch of mid-sized pirates that this can just be a powerful effect in, especially with any kind of hand buffs or actual buffs. So I think this card is actually a card that has the possibility for some niche play. Next we have Tide Pool Pupil, a 2/1 Naga for 1. Battlecry, if you've cast 3 spells while holding this, discover one of them. Maybe like Naga Mage is back. I don't know. It's not really it being like a 3 spells is a lot of spells to cast, right? Like this definitely wants to go into a deck that is playing a very high density of spells. I could maybe see this being something you're using to get like extra copies of like Light Show, right? Because you want to just, get obviously that more copies of that. So yeah, I feel like if you're playing a deck that like really specifically wants a certain spell like Light Show, maybe this has potential. But otherwise, it feels like this is just a lot of investment to get like just an extra copy of a spell. Next, we have Travel Agent. 2 cost 2/2. Battlecry, discover a location from any class. I mean, this is just like a good enough card. Like, like a 2 cost thing that generates value, right? You could maybe get something really impactful. There's also just a lot of kind of trash locations if you're not playing the appropriate stuff. Like getting like a the 1 cost heal location, right? Fan club outside of priest is usually going to be pretty bad. But it is a discover effect. It's not get a random one. So I do think that there's some potential here. Maybe you use this as like just an early value play in like a Highlander deck. Maybe you're just using this as an early value play in like a rogue deck that wants off class cards, right? You could potentially do a few things here that I think are pretty reasonable. I don't think this is like a crazy all-star card, but I could certainly see this finding some amount of niche play. Next we have Baythin Bodybuilder. After a minion is summoned for your opponent during your turn, silence and destroy it. Clearly we're curving this into the guy who summons an 8/8, even though that's bad because we want it to attack all their stuff. But no, this is a very powerful tool against like death rattles, right? Like if your opponent is playing like a death rattle deck, maybe this is a way that you're like, hey, I'm gonna clear out all your death rattles, and you're not gonna get more death rattles. It's pretty niche, right? Like I can't imagine that you'd rather play this than just like silence effects on their things that are gonna summon minions during your turn. It just feels like it's very, very difficult for this to be sort of like relevant enough to come up. It is a Murloc. Maybe that matters. Maybe you just want like a giant Murloc for some sort of deck, but it does not really feel like it is, that useful. You could use it with like Dirty Rat, right, to just guarantee you kill whatever comes out. But that's 7 mana. You could probably use that 5 mana to deal with whatever it is they're playing anyway. Next up, we have a Lamplighter. It's 3 costs, 3/2. Battlecry, deal 1 damage, improved each turn in a row you've played an elemental. So I was talking about Elemental Shaman earlier, and Elemental Shaman often just wants to use the legendary to kill the opponent. Scar, the Catastrophe. You often just want to play all your stuff to eventually find Scar and kill them. This is more of Scar, right? Like if you're playing it, this is actually a real payoff that isn't just a single legendary for really playing elementals every turn. Like the mage payoffs just are not good enough. Shaman payoff as Scar. Maybe this makes mage actually want to bother trying, right? Because this is another like individual payoff that you could play in mage because this is a very powerful effect. But yeah, I feel like this gives the elemental deck, specifically Shaman, because Shaman has another of this effect in Scar, and being able to possibly like discover this guy, randomly generate this guy. There's more incentive to actually try to lean into that because you have multiple tools to possibly like blow your opponent up and end the game. Like double Lamplighter, for like 16 or whatever, even just like turn 8, right? Can be really, really powerful. So I think this is actually a card that's really important to the elemental strategies that have largely struggled so far in Standard. Next up, we have Dread Deserter. 6 cost, 6/6 pirate, has charge if this isn't starting your deck. It's just a very weird card, right? Like, obviously, you just want to discover this. You don't put it in your deck. You just want to discover it, which I do think is like an interesting element of Hearthstone. Like the fact that there are cards that generate cards from outside the game does mean that things, even if you kind of never put them in your deck, are potentially relevant to gameplay. This is a particularly weird one because it's like, hey, discover this. Hey. So yeah, you're never putting this in a deck. You're just hoping you discover it from something. Next, we have Grifta. Trusted Venda. So yeah, discover an amazing amulet to give to both players. The enemies is a phony version. So the Grifta amulets are a variety of spells. You get a good version of the card, and they get a weak version of the card. Oh, actually, is it give one to your opponent at random? Oh, this is Old Grifter. Okay. I was looking at Old Grifter. This is New Grifter. I was like, what? Grift's a trusted vendor. 4 cost, 4/5. Battle Cry. Discover an amazing amulet to give to both players. The enemies is a phony version. So, you can have things like Amulet of Passions. Take control of an enemy minion until the end of your turn. Theirs, it has 1 attack this turn. Same effect otherwise. You could get 3 random legendary cards. Theirs is get 3 random legendary cards, then transform them into commons. You could get summon a random 4-cost minion and give it taunt. They get it can't attack. There's deal 6 damage or deal 6 damage to a minion. There's restore 12 health to your hero, then take 6 damage, or just restore 12 health to your hero. There's draw 3 cards, or draw 3 cards, then discard 2 of them. There's reduce the cost of all cards in your hand by 1, or reduce the cost of all cards in your hand by 1 except for spells. So there's, basically a variety of various powerful things that you can get, and you give your opponent something, but theirs is largely a relatively low impact effect. So I think this is just a generally interesting utility card that can go into a lot of different decks. Probably the sort of card that's going to see more play in Control and Reno style decks than anything else. But not like just a hey, this is an auto include, right? It is a discover effect. So you're very, very likely to get something that is relevant, but you're certainly not guaranteed to get any particular effect, so you can't rely on it. Next up, we have XB931 Housekeeper. 2 cost, 2/3 mech. After you use location, gain 3 armor. Obviously, you could use this with location that resets when you gain armor, and boom, gain a bunch of armor. But yeah, this is, I think if you're looking for some survivability in classes that don't otherwise have it, it could be interesting. But otherwise, it doesn't really seem that powerful to me. Probably not the sort of card you play in a class that can already build up a bunch of armor. But if you're playing a bunch of locations, maybe it's good. Octomasseuse, 4 cost, 1/8 Beast Mech, deals octuple damage to minions. Hilarious card. Does not work with Jormunger. Always bigger Jormunger the way people want, because it assigns the damage and then assigns the excess damage to the opponent. It doesn't octuple and then assign the octuple damage to the opponent. But it is a hilarious card. Next we have Seaside Giant. Costs 2 less for each time you've used a location this game. So this is obviously possible. Like if you're playing, say, the Discover a Taunt when you gain armor reset, and this guy and the Giant, boom! You can quickly get out 8/8s. Is that good? Maybe. But probably not that good, considering, you're playing some mediocre cards to generally invest in it. It just kind of depends on how good getting out quick 8/8s are. Next we have Cryopractor. Battlecry, give a minion +3/+3 and freeze it. Could be powerful with taunt minions. You could use this as a way to combine with things that care about frozen stuff, like in Demon Hunter. Probably not like a constructed card. Next we have Carry On Grub. Battlecry, get a 1-cost suitcase. Pack the top 2 cards of your deck in it. A 4-cost 5/4 beast. This is basically just a 4-cost 5/4 that also has a 1-cost Arcane Intellect attached to it. This is just a powerful card, right? Like, if you're playing a class that struggles with card draw, or if you're playing a deck that just cares about beasts or whatever, this is just I think it's just a good card. I could easily see this seeing play in Hunter, which generally it can struggle with card draw in sort of more proactive decks. It's not amazing, right? Because you're paying 4 for a 5/4. That's not great stat line or anything, but you are getting significant value attached to it and getting a decent body at least. So it's kind of like a 5-mana 5/4 that draws 2 cards, except you can spread the cost out, which makes it even better than that. Next we have Gorgon Zormu, 3-cost 3/3 dragon. Yes. Battlecry, get a 2-cost cheese that summons 3 1-cost minions, upgrades every turn. So this is obviously a card that you want to play as quickly as possible, because you want to keep upgrading your cheese and then cheese your opponent out by getting a bunch of giant minions. Just a cool card. I love this. Super, super good. Super fun. Has a relevant minion type. So yeah, Gorgon Zormu, I love it, and I expect to play it a lot. I don't even care if it's good. Next we have Overplanner. 3-cost 3/3 with Battlecry. Discover 3 cards in your deck to put on top in that order. Definitely an interesting card for especially combo style decks. I don't know that it's necessarily worth spending the card, but if you are playing like this could work with the priest card that makes the top card of your deck cost 1. So you could set it up such that you can play that and then get it at 1 cost. The turn that you want it on curves. Pretty interesting. Next, Concierge. Three cost 3/4. Cards from another class cost one less. Could be interesting as a thief rogue card, but investing in a three cost 3/4 that isn't doing anything else other than giving that discount, rather than like just sort of spending that mana playing those cards, might not be worth it. Next, we have Customs Enforcer. Enemy cards that didn't start in their deck cost 2 more for a 2/5 pirate. This is an interesting one. Certainly a powerful effect against, say, Excavate Rogue. If there are like thief classes or card generating classes, this is a card that could be an interesting inclusion. Maybe you even have this like an ETC, right? Like we live in a world where ETC gives us access to cards that maybe like textile cards outside the game, and this is certainly a card that I could see playing in ETC against that sort of deck. AFK, the end of your turn, give all other friendly minions that didn't attack +2/+2. If she buffed herself, I think she'd be maybe good, but like you'd have to generate like a bunch of stuff. It has the potential to be powerful, right? Like if you generate a big board and play her in the same turn, you're getting a lot of stats from it, right? But it still just like feels like you're asking a lot, right? This feels like a hard card to use. But I mean, like again, like if you have ways to generate like a board of stuff that she can buff, they have to deal with her and the rest of your board of stuff. It could be powerful, but she just seems like she's a bit too weak to me. Next, we have Drink Server. 2 cost 2/2 Murloc Pirate. Death will get a random drink. All the drinks seem like they're at least reasonable, right? And this has multiple relevant minion types and on a 2/2 body for 2. So this seems like actually a very reasonable card for kind of a value situation in some decks. Could easily see this in an amalgam style deck because you want to get more minion types and it can give you a little bit of incremental value. Next, we have Incendious. 6 cost 2/10 Elemental. At the end of your turn, upgrade your explosions, battle cry, shuffle 5 explosion or options in your deck. And they are cast when drawn, deal 1 damage to all enemies. This actually feels like a pretty powerful card, right? Like it's already a 6 cost 2/10, which is pretty huge. And if your opponent doesn't kill it, you just have these cast when drawn AoEs that just get more and more powerful. So seems pretty strong to me as a card in a lot of different possible decks that want to play any kind of longer game or just care about getting an elemental. Next, Scrapbooking Student. 5 cost 5/5. Battlecry, summon a copy of a friendly location. Meh. I'm not really all that impressed by a lot of the location stuff going on. I could be underestimating it, but maybe you use this with like Prison of Yogg, right? That seems like the best use. Next we have Beast Whale. 7 cost 4/20. Nice. Taunt. Battlecry, deal 10 to this. This is obviously a very powerful thing to summon off of, say, a food fight or off of the sandwich. A way to cheat this into play is really powerful. Or if you have, like passive ways to heal things, like say in Priest, or like resurrect it with the Res Priest card that we talked about and didn't really have much of a use for. All right, next, Bloodsail Recruiter. 2 cost 4/1 pirate with Battlecry Discover Pirate. 1 health is can be tough to really justify. With 4 power, like attacking into it as a rogue or attacking into it as a demon hunter, it's pretty punishing. And yeah, like the fact that it's giving you a little bit of additional value because it just automatically discovers is actually a pretty decent place to be. Next up we have Hosen Roughhouser. 3 cost 2/4. Whenever for another friendly pirate attacks, give it +1/+1. This feels like it's probably actually at its best in Demon Hunter. We talked a bit about the Demon Hunter payoff stuff for all the 1/1 pirates with charge that you get. And obviously this is a way to make them much, much more powerful, right? Like being able to make them all into 2/2s is, pretty strong. Or if you're just playing like fundamentally a pirate deck, this has potential to be reasonably powerful there as well. If you have a lot of cheap pirates, this can buff. Next up is Wave Pool Thrasher. 4 cost 4/5. Battlecry, give all other minions -1/-1. Death Rattle, give all other minions +1/+1. Hard card to use, right? Like you want this to be something you play, wipe out your opponent's small things, and then play a board, trade it, and buff and buff your stuff. Seems like this wants to be in a deck with a bunch of small things to take advantage of the Death Rattle, but makes the Battlecry bad. So definitely a challenging card to really build a constructed deck around. Seems like the sort of thing that might be good in an arena. Next we have Mixologist. 3 cost 2/3 battle cry. Craft a custom 1 cost potion. Is this just giving you like a 1 cost like Kazakus potion? It looks like Kazakus because Kazakus potions were pretty sick. So that's actually possibly an interesting card. I wish it had a minion type, then it might be good. I think that we've kind of gone past the point where we're just getting a 1 cost potion is likely to be good enough though, as far as power level is concerned. Next, Coconut Cannoneer. After an adjacent minion attacks, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. It's an interesting card with things that are making swarms of stuff, especially if you can position it such a way that you can get, you know, kind of flame tongue totem style value out of it. Seems it is a 1/4, so there's, you know, some elements that can make it you know, hard to kill, but it seems fairly challenging without like just things that are making a bunch of charge minions, like in say Demon Hunter. Bumbling Bellhop is a 3 cost 3/3 taunt undead pirate. Battlecraft, if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, summon a copy of this. Maybe this is a reasonable big spell card. The big spell decks we were looking at would only play like a relatively small number of big spells. Maybe this goes into a like Wish Upon a Star deck, having Wish Upon a Star to possibly, you know, trigger the battle cry as well as Wish Upon a Star to buff it, so you're getting powerful copies. Does seem like it has the potential to be strong. And last but certainly not least, Adaptive Amalgam. This is one of my favorite cards in the entire set. I really like amalgam type effects, and I really like things that reward you for sort of building towards something. 1 cost 1/2, all minion types, death rattle. Shuffled in your deck keeps any enhancements. So this keeps buffs from Party Animal, buffs from Magnetic, buffs from Blessing of Kings, anything. So I think this is a pretty exciting card that can potentially build entirely new archetypes by itself, right? Like you can play this in like Menagerie Warrior I was talking about. This is a you know, card that helps you know, enable a lot of those sort of things. So yeah, like I said, one of the most exciting cards to me in the entire set that I am really looking forward to trying to build stuff around. So certainly something that I expect to see a lot of play, and certainly something that I will be playing a lot of. So that is it. That is the final card of Perils in Paradise. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in this set. I did say in the beginning, you know, I was like a little bit disappointed because I had thought tourists worked in a different way. I totally understand that it is a very challenging effect to balance if you can, you know, pull cards from throughout Hearthstone's card pool. Certainly come broken at some point, I'm sure, if you're pulling cards from different classes. But you know, it does give you some exciting options to try to experiment with things across classes within the set, at least, and certainly a ton of classes that I am looking at playing, a ton of decks that I'm looking at experimenting with that I'm certainly very excited about. I will be doing theory crafting on the 17th. So if you're watching live or if you're watching the VOD before then, be sure to check that out. It should be a lot of fun. And then absolutely looking forward to Perils in Paradise launching on the 23rd. I'll be playing a ton starting then. So thank you all very much for watching. Let me know what you are excited about from Perils in Paradise, whether it's individual cards, classes, decks, etc. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.